Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director and Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold today. We are going to hear from management of Aurion, including Dave Lowton, he's a non-executive chairman, and Matti Talika, he's CEO and director of the company. So during today's webinar, they will provide an overview and outlook, then we'll take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Aurion webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on the company's page 2 of its corporate presentation. That can be found on its website, aurionresources.com. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Aurion. And with that, I now turn it over to David Lowton to kick off today's webinar. Dave?
Thanks so much, David. Well, I'm looking at the attendees, and I see that many of you are investors in the company or have attended before. So we'll get through the high points as quickly as we can. Aurion, as you all know, is a gold exploration company working on multiple active discoveries in Finland. Uh, 118 million shares outstanding, give or take, today, with about $19 million in the bank at June 30th. Capitalized well into 2023, if not to the end of 2023. Largest shareholders are Kinross, Newmont, Eric Sprott, Ross Beatty, and of course management is the largest shareholder group at just over 14%. I'm still the largest shareholder at just over 10, still a volunteer chairman, taking no stock options, no compensation, and very excited about where things are going in the near term. The stock is inexpensive today based on where it's been historically and based on the space, trading at just under 50 cents, I think gives us an enterprise value, therefore, of something like $30 million. I think this is verging on ridiculous. However, let's see if we can move you all in the direction of that opinion as well. Many of you have seen this histogram before. Exploration is continuing to be rewarded, perhaps not as well as it was when Eric was still writing $50 million checks for everyone who had a great drill hole. But you can see that newfound gold is still well up into the hundreds of millions. Rupert Resources, our neighbor to the north, commands close to an $800 million valuation more recently. Snowline has had a fantastic reaction to some very promising drill results way up there in the Yukon. And some of the past champions are now gone. Either they've been acquired, as Great Bear was, or they've fallen from grace as they've lost the race between the shares outstanding and the drill bit. I don't think we've done either of those things, and I think that there's lots of upside to come. For anyone who doesn't know Finland, the opportunities that mining was in the hands of the state until 1995, and the state mining company Udo Campo was not concerned with gold. Lapland, as I'll remind you all, is a greenstone belt with the same kind of potential as the Abitibi or the Norseman, same kind of rocks. It hosts Europe's largest gold mine, Kittilä, 8 million ounces in all categories, being mined by Agnico Eagle, about 40 kilometers away from us as the crow flies, and some other fantastic emerging discoveries, not the least of which is our Aurion discovery, but of course Rupert's Better Ikkari discovery, our discovery Helmi in joint venture with B2Gold, and the wonderful Sakatti copper nickel PGE discovery, which is only about 10 kilometers east of us. We've got the district tied up. The controlling structure, we think, is the Circa Shear Zone. It's a 125 kilometer long crustal scale belt modeled to 9 kilometers depth. When we just came into Finland, it seemed curious to Mike, our founder, that gold had been found about 40 places along the line and really hadn't ever been followed up. Things have changed quite dramatically now. It's looked like this when we got here, a couple of bankrupt mines and a few stray gold showings. And since then, things have been moving at a very brisk pace. I would say that there's a significant discovery every year since 2017. This would include a couple of our surface discoveries, which are unsourced, but Amerusko kicked it off in 2017, first drilled in 2018. We made two fantastic surface discoveries at Notches and Launi in the following years, although those remain unsourced in the ground. And then Rupert made this earth-shattering Ikkari discovery right on the border of our property line in partnership with B2Gold. Ikkari's been an incredibly high-yield discovery, 4 million ounces of inferred resource in only 36,000 meters of drilling in only 18 months, one of the highest yielding exploration programs we've seen in many years in the business, probably less than $13 million spent. So an incredible yield on meters drilled or money spent, and fantastic market cap gains. They got to $1.3 billion at one point in the last year or so, and they're still $800 million despite the carnage we've seen in gold and gold exploration markets. So really a positive endorsement for what's going on in the area. This discovery had two beneficial side effects. One is it caused B2Gold to move the drills from about 35 kilometers away on the property all the way over to this edge. And this resulted in the Helmi discovery happening within 2 or 3 holes. And it's changed the way that we've thought about our own exploration efforts since then. I'll scroll through these and just talk about where the company is going now. Our original discoveries, you can see, were clustered around all these float showings, all within the sedimentary basin, which is the area between the dashed black lines here. And the story of Aurion has really been written in 2 chapters. We were a prospecting company looking in sedimentary outcrops for several years and making discoveries in them. But the Ikkari discovery is in these much more amenable volcanic host rocks. And this has caused the company to change its focus out of the sedimentary basin and into the volcanic package, which we have many kilometers of. We're quite excited about our joint venture discovery. It strikes for about 2 kilometers at the moment. It isn't at the moment as good as Ikkari. Ikkari is probably twice as wide and maybe a gram richer in grade. However, despite the fact we're running 1.5 grams probably on what we have, and despite the fact it isn't quite as wide, it is 3 times the strike length at the moment, and with lots of infill potential. The other thing that excites us is, of course, that 7 kilometers away on this gap lies Kutuvama, which is the historical discovery that we purchased this property for. It's got 600 gram meter drill intercepts, and we think has lots and lots of potential. Strikes for 1 kilometer, was drilled as a base metal prospect, so not well drilled for gold. And of course, the open question is what lies between the end of our Helmi drilling and Kutuvama in this 7 kilometer gap in between. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Matti Talika to talk about the geological upside for the joint venture, how this relates to our 100% owned ground, and then I'll wrap back in later to talk about how we monetize. Take it away, Matti.
Hey, thank you, Dave, and good day or good evening here from Finnish Lapland. From Sodankylä, we have beautiful winter coming here. We have 15 centimeters snow and -5 and bright skies. It's gorgeous here as we speak. And as Dave mentioned, we are seeing, well, we think that we are seeing the first steps of a development of a major gold camp. And it is a hallmark of this cycle that during the first years of systematic exploration, we see a number of gold occurrences popping out of the ground. And that's exactly what's happening here. As Dave mentioned, Amerusko was found in 2018. Other deposits, occurrences we found in 2019. Ikkari was found in May 2020 and Helmi in 2021. So of course we are really excited of the opportunity what we have here in this fantastic area to explore. And just to put this in context that how quickly things are moving here, as I mentioned, Ikkari was discovered already in May 2020, and within 18 months, with only 36,000 meters of drilling, they were able to produce fantastic 4 million ounce resource. That resource is located right here. You can see the blue line here that shows the border to our joint venture with B2Gold. So we are very, very close. It's just 50 to 100 meters from the property boundary. And that is only within a 600 meter strike length is 4 million ounces. Now, when we think about orogenic gold deposits, the key features are the structures. The structure controls where the fluids carry the gold, where it can be precipitated, how the alteration forms, and so on. So you can see this east-west trending structure that extends from Ikkari into our joint venture property. And already the second and third holes intersected sizable gold mineralization, and we got the first results 13 months ago. Since then, we have drilled about 40 holes along a strike length about 2 kilometers, and we have intersected gold in almost all of those holes. So this system is shaping up to be something quite significant. 2 kilometer strike length, and as Dave mentioned, we still have 6 kilometer of untested strike length of this major crustal scale structure. And on the other end, we already have historic Kutuvuoma occurrence where we have 1 kilometer strike length of gold mineralization with a number of 100 plus gram meter hits. I'd like to also point out the joint venture structure. It is 70-30, B2Gold on 70, Aurion 30%. We have multiple prospects, and I think we have one of the best partners in the exploration space. B2Gold is really valued partner for us. The cooperation has been excellent. B2Gold is the operator, and we try to support the project moving forward as quickly as we can. And also, I'd like to point out that this is the second largest greenfield exploration budget for B2Gold after Western Africa, Mali, and surroundings of Fekola. So we are really putting lots of effort here, moving this program and the discoveries forward as quickly as we can. Good example of that is that we are currently drilling with 2 rigs. We are planning to drill 18,000 meters during this year. We started the year with a budget with 10 million Canadian dollars, and due to the success we had early this year, the budget was increased to $13.5 million. And I see no signs or good reasons to stop here. So we will keep going next year as well. Let's see what the budget will be and the plans, but we will keep on drilling during the winter season very actively as well. Now, Dave mentioned that we have refocused, or we are kind of like taking another approach to our exploration as well in our fully owned properties, and there is really good reasons for that. Of course, Ikkari, Helmi, Kutuvuoma, all these potentially very significant discoveries, they are hosted within mafic volcanic rocks. How Aurion started to operate in Finland. We started with prospecting and mapping, and the team led by Mike Basher did absolutely fantastic work in identifying a number of significant gold occurrences by simply walking the ground and collecting samples from silica-rich sediments and from coarse veins. And the reason those type of lithologies are available or are on surface is because they are resistant to erosion. Now, when we add the layer that the recent big discoveries, which are very efficient in a way to explore, once you get into these very consistent zones of mineralization hosted in mafic volcanic rocks, you can explore them very efficiently. So now we are also supporting this, what we have already discovered, by adding another layer. We are doing geophysics, we are doing systemic base of till on those domain boundaries along those massive structures in these mafic volcanic rocks. And we are finding lots of anomalies. And all these anomalies we need to follow up. This is the system, these are the key methods that have led to the discoveries of Ikkari led to discoveries of Kittilä mine, the largest gold mine in Europe, as well as Sakatti and many other deposits along the trend. So now we are combining the prospecting and mapping with these geophysical and base of till surveys, and we are finding lots of anomalies for gold. And we have also started scout drill testing program to test as many of these targets as we can in the next few months. Just quickly to tell you about Ammorusko and the initial discovery, and why this is super exciting as well is the fact that we have 1,200 boulder samples averaging 25 grams per ton gold. It's a really significant amount of gold on surface. And it took a few tries to find at least one of the sources for this area. Here on the Ammorusko main area, we drilled super high grade holes in 2018. However, when we consider the scale of the system here, it is unlikely that this is the only source. So we continued exploring around the trend, and we found another source here on top of the hill as well. We have so far drill tested about a kilometer strike length of mineralization here at Ammorusko. We have focused on certain areas where we had drill pads prepared for helicopter supported drilling. That was one of the key factors that kept us moving more quickly with Ammorusko. We were forced to use helicopter supported drilling, and of course that is quite slow and it is of course very expensive. However, now we have a very good solution to use normal track mounted drill rigs. We are building these temporary roads using blasting mats, and now we can get on top of the hill to the best drilling location with a normal track mounted rig. So now we have an opportunity to efficiently test also Ammorusko and the nearby areas here. What is also significant, what we have found learned during the past 12 months, that initially Ammorusko, as mentioned, we were focusing on these sediment domains here. We have lots of high-grade nuggety gold here, and there's a very good chance to find more of these high-grade shoots that come to the surface, and we believe that they are already valuable. However, we have also, during this year, during the past 12 months, identified that along these big structures, what we have here, first of all, we have a number of these structures, not just one, but also on the mafic and ultramafic side of these domain boundaries, we do have gold, as we have the example here in this beautifully sheared, altered gap row with arsenopyrite dissemination and gold as well. So again, the structures, they are the key for the emplacement of the gold mineralization, and now we are combining the surface information with the regional information supported by geophysical anomalies, geochemical anomalies, and we are generating lots of new targets that we are actively testing. We have very big program going on the joint venture. We have currently 2 rigs there working. We will keep on doing that for the remainder of the year, and we are planning to have even more active winter season. We have 1 diamond core rig operating on our fully owned properties, and we are also continuing this base of till and geophysical programs. We have currently 2 base of till rigs taking samples as we speak, and we are generating more and more anomalies as we move forward with our systematic approach to test our extensive land package. And now, Dave, if you want to say a few words on this slide, please.
So you can all see what's going on here. Exploration is a volatile business. Many of you have heard me say this before and seen this chart before and understand the relevance of it. It's a little bit out of date. We're probably closer to 560 days into a bear market on the venture now, although I think recently things have begun to turn. Gold is starting to perform. Crypto's breaking down, and a lot of the areas that have been sucking capital away from. So as we've so often discussed, what's the business proposition for companies like Aurion? We are in the business of supplying the pipeline that the producers need to continue to exist. And this is 6 years in the life of the mining business from 2016 to 2022. There have been a couple of other really awful press releases since this slide was produced showing mining companies losing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of market cap as a result of either a permit revocation or friction in country, or revising earnings down, or revising costs up, or making an acquisition of something relatively significant for paper. It's a very, very difficult business for these companies. And $1 billion on average of loss per event over the course of all these years, despite having bought 60 odd companies. And as you can see from this chart, the average price that producers are paying to replace their reserves gets on to $600 million. And of course, we've most recently seen a stunning example of this, and that is Agnico Eagle paying $3 billion, give or take, to buy half of Malartic, which is a 1 gram deposit, and which has a 5.6% royalty load on it. It's in Quebec, and so jurisdictionally it's great. It's already a mine that's been built and permitted, but we think that it's an illustration of the sort of premium that the producer community is willing to pay for good assets in good jurisdictions. As we point out in other presentations, if you combined Ikkari and Helmi together, the footprint would already be as large as Malartic is. And I was just checking through the database earlier this morning to see when Odyssey was discovered, and it was first drilled in 2014, fully about 100 years after gold was first found and mining began at Malartic. So we feel like this project is way ahead of the curve, and we think that it could revalue very quickly. So I'm going to pass it back to Maddie to finish this off. I apologize to everyone for the awkward handing off of the baton there, but let's finish it up, Maddie.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave, again, and I hope you can all see me. And well, I don't actually want you to see me, but maybe you can hear me. I'm not a pretty guy. But nevertheless, just want to point out a couple more things. We are very active in our exploration phases at the moment. We have active program on the joint venture, 13.5 million Canadian program for this year. We have 2 rigs drilling as we speak. We expect continuous news flow from that. We are focusing on the Helmi area, but we are also testing a number of other high priority targets in the joint venture. In our fully owned properties, we have 1 drill rig turning there. We are generating more and more significant base of till geochemical anomalies in same areas where we have interesting geophysical features. These are the key methods that have created lots of value. We made lots of discoveries already, and I think there's many more to come within our properties. And just to summarize here, the different value components we have within our company. We have our fully owned properties. We have hundreds of square kilometers of premier greenstone belt with multiple gold occurrences already discovered and a fantastic potential to find more. We have the B2Gold joint venture, extremely exciting, new discovery just a year ago, which keeps expanding. We have one of the best partners in the exploration and mining space, and we are moving forward very rapidly on that one. We own 18% of Strategic Resources, which is a development company backed by Lumina Group, and we also have a fairly recent joint venture with Kinross. So lots of good things happening here, and hopefully we can provide lots of very good news releases in the upcoming months. And I think we are open for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dave and Maddie, for a very informative presentation. So we're going to now kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar. Reminder to everybody online that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. So I guess let's start with that streaky TSX-V chart. You mentioned, we might be in day 560 day of the bear market that might be impacting volumes here and performance. Can you maybe discuss the low volumes you're trading on the OTCQX. Have you made strides introducing the story to new investors that might use those exchanges as opposed to the TSX-V?
Well, we had made quite a lot of headway, I think, in marketing in the States a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, I think that that's tapered off. We're doing as many events as we can, but what I have found over the years is there's nothing quite like traveling and meeting with groups face-to-face down there. So that's resuming now. We've had a chance to, we haven't missed Beaver Creek, and we certainly attend every Denver Gold show, and I think that we'll be able to get back on the radar screen there. It's not for lack of trying, but of course, we aren't the best social media marketing company. We're working on making that better, but it's taking some time, and I'd say that it's not been a strength of ours being off of the face-to-face circuit. But we're repairing that now.
Right. Okay. With both Kinross and Newmont being shareholders, Agnico Eagle being your largest producing partner there, or neighbor, I should say, Rupert is right next door. Do you experience or have you generated any strategic investor tension that might be helpful to make this story more attractive?
Yeah, it's already there, David. I think that it was probably a little more tense prior to Kinross taking over a Great Bear. That got them a little busier than I think we would have liked to see them. Then, of course, they had tremendous bad luck after that with the Russian-Ukraine situation, losing those assets and having some pressure on the balance sheet. But they are there, and they continue to go pro rata in every financing, and we have relationships right up to the top of Kinross, which I think is unusual for juniors. Newmont, as I've mentioned in many presentations, visits the property every year that they can travel, and I think that their interest in the area has only heightened since the discovery. And I have also openly mentioned that we've tried to obtain their block from them and put it in the hands of an incoming investor, and they wanted to keep it. So all those, I think, augur well. We'll see what happens with the rest of the camp. We're in conversations with other groups that I think have a real interest in getting into good jurisdictions. And I think that that's about all I can say. But interest remains high, and it's peripatetic. Well, that's maybe the wrong word. Sporadic is a better word. You see data points every few months that remind you of just how expensive good gold assets are. So it isn't just Agnico coming over the top and paying $3 billion for Malartic with that massive royalty load on it. But Great Bear royalty got sold for $200 million to Royal Gold. That's just a 2% NSR on Dixie, and who knows what that will be. Rumor was they wouldn't have been able to produce a 4 million ounce resource if they tried to produce a resource before they get bought. And we all see a great future there. And then Royal Gold paid $500 million for the Cortez royalty, which has some very interesting features in it. So I'm quite confident that we're working on something that is the right size and has enough blue sky and is in the right jurisdiction, so that with a little more data, you might be able to see values like that beginning to come into play, even just for our 30% on the joint venture.
Yeah. Now, you have lots of property that needs attention. How much focus are you giving to trying to find other people's money to work on the ground? Or what is it you might want to keep 100% Aurion? Well,
we've certainly thought about some of the properties that we don't have time to get to, and you saw joint ventures with B2 on some of the property that Kinross had under joint venture. Seeing Kinross come into one of our properties. We vended off the vanadium property to Ross Beatty and his gang some years ago. And those discussions are always ongoing. The one thing I would say, David, is that when you get into conditions like this, you lose half of your competitive tension for joint venture opportunities. The juniors just can't afford to come in and make you an appropriate offer. So you're sort of left just dealing with the larger companies. And I think that there are plenty who are interested in coming into Finland. And the ones that have expressed interest to us have expressed interest in Risti, which holds the Aumrusco discovery, and which we think probably will have the next significant discovery in the region. And that's a massively forward-looking statement. So I don't think that we would let that go. but we are continually having discussions. We look at our cost of capital. We think about the value of time, money, and risk, and those thoughts are always on the table.
Right. Okay. Yeah, this bear market in resource stocks has been pretty long ongoing. What positive changes are you now seeing that may suggest we're turning the corner here? You did mention the crypto issues, and what else are you seeing?
Well, from a macro perspective, raw materials are beginning to get some respect. There's been almost denial globally in our need for energy and for reliable sources of baseload energy. And there's been, I think, a naivete worldwide around the amount of metals required to make the transition to a world where people only drive EV and where wind and solar are the only sources of power. So gold actually doesn't play a role in all that. However, it remains an important part of that suite, we'll say, for investment. And I think that if the gold industry could get its act together, maybe it would be possible to get some of the audience who came to crypto because they were afraid of the printing press. Maybe it would be possible to convert some of those that audience into thinking about gold as being an important way to preserve your savings, as it is viewed in all of the developing world.
Yeah, sure. Now, Finland hasn't really seen that much exploration over the past several decades, especially to some places such as the Abitibi in Canada. How has this provided both opportunities and challenges for Aurion?
Well, I think it's providing an opportunity for investors at the moment.
And it is providing a massive opportunity as well, as a little bit of a history for everyone who may be interested in, and that Finland was closed to foreign exploration mining companies until 1995, when Finland joined the European Union. And before that, all exploration and mining was focused on base metals, GDP-related products. So now we actually find ourselves in a sweet spot, in a way that we have quite extensive amount of geological, geochemical, geophysical information within Finland, but it has only been applied to base metals. So for gold exploration, this is a really unique opportunity, and I think we can actually see that now during the past 5 years, as Dave showed us the slide, that how many new discoveries have been made. There's been, let's say, 20 new gold mineral currencies have been found by Aurion and our neighbors during the past few years. That is quite unique opportunity for exploration.
Yeah, speaking of your neighbors, Kittilä is the closest mine, largest gold mine in Europe. But I don't think you compare your assets to that. It's a refractory gold deposit. You compare better to Rupert's 4 million ounce deposit right next door, specifically compared to your B2Gold JV discovery. Now, do you believe you're simply an extension of Ikkari, or do you think you're another deposit along trend?
I think if we look at the larger scale system first, we have over 100 kilometer long crustal scale structure. And we have now, let's say, 40 to 50 gold occurrences along this long structure. And I think that there's room for so many more to be discovered along those structure. Ikkari, fantastic discovery. Then, as you know, Dave, it's quite typical that you tend to get these pods of mineralization at the certain spaced, along these bigger trends. So we have Ikkari 4 million ounces, then we have, let's say, kilometer gap. We have Helmi, which is now already 2 kilometers, where we have gold intervals. Then we have a gap again that's completely unexplored for 6 kilometers, and then we have a historic gold occurrence. So I think that we keep seeing more of these, let's say, pearls in a string, if I may use this very old saying. But it's unlikely that in these sort of complicated, in these sort of highly deformed settings, you get planar type of deposits, but you tend to see more controlled by these folding events, and then you have a kind of reoccurrence of those structural features, creating these really prospective zones for significant gold mineralizations.
Maddie, maybe you can comment. Although Kutuvuoma anchors this trend as we see it, the structure itself goes beyond Kutuvuoma, doesn't it?
It does, and within the joint venture we have tens of kilometers of the same structure. Then within our fully owned properties, we have combined length of 40 kilometers of these large structures that we consider are all the strike length is prospective for gold, and that is now supported by the widespread anomalism we are seeing in our systematic sampling.
Yeah. Now, you guys jumped ahead a little bit. I don't want to get off Helmi yet, but we're going to come back to that 100% owned ground. But as you said, at Helmi specifically, you're starting to identify these structurally controlled, I guess, parallel or sub-parallel lenses or pods. But are you starting to try to figure out how to focus on those higher grade shoots, such that future drilling might be even a better hit rate than you are seeing now?
Yeah. I mean, we are still in the phase at Helmi that we are learning from every single hole we drill there. The first drill hole ever drilled in the area was last year in August. We got the first results in October last year. That's 13 months. And since then, it's only 40 holes into the system, and they are very, very widely distributed holes as well. And we are getting gold in almost every one of those. And you are quite right that within the, let's say, the Helmi main area where we have a little bit more drilling, still widely spaced, we are starting to see several mineralized shoots, parallel mineralized shoots, and there seems to be a structural control to those as well. So of course that provides us further information that how we're going to target those potentially higher grade domains, because the mineralized envelopes are very, very large. And we know that within these wider mineralized envelopes, there are higher grades, at least at Ikkari and also at Kutuvuoma. So why not at Helmi as well?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, what stage do you believe Helmi is at right now? And I guess what I'm getting at is how high a priority does B2Gold have towards resource definition at this point? They certainly don't want small deposits. That's not going to move the needle for them. So what are they looking at?
Well, in terms of the interest level from B2, I think it's very high, and that is reflected on the exploration budget. The fact that it's the second largest greenfield exploration budget after Western Africa and Mali for B2Gold, and we have sizable program going for this year, and expected that to continue next year as well. In terms of at what stage we are still expanding the system. Of those, again, I mentioned the 40 holes. They are, let's say, within 2 kilometers strike length. We have a few regional targets we have tested, and then we have, let's say, 5-6 kilometers of structure completely untested. And actually, we have another structure which is about 10 kilometers identified pretty close as well. So we are still in the phase of expanding the system. We don't know how big this could be.
Yeah. So right now, there's no potential timeline for a resource estimate.
Not at the moment.
No. Is there a breakdown of resource drilling versus exploration drilling, like maybe the last press release?
You mean at the joint venture?
Yeah, at the joint venture. Yeah.
I would consider everything as exploration, and most actually recent holes, they have been in very, very wide step out holes and testing new anomalies, new targets, and that's partly function because we are generating lots of new targets, but also some of the, let's say, more infill type of holes, we need to. They are in a swampy area. So we need to wait for the winter conditions in order to drill test those particular targets.
Right. Okay. So I guess let's forget the 7 to 8 kilometers of trend on the B2Gold JV for now, and maybe look a little bit to the east. You've got 100% ground extending in that direction. Can you maybe tell us what kind of work you're doing along that trend? I know base of till surveys, for example. What areas are you focused on there?
Sure. So we are building on the information generated from the prospecting and mapping, where we already identified a number of gold occurrences close to these big structures on the sediment side. We started this systematic geophysical, geochemical program late 2020. And the aim for that was that we didn't want to miss the opportunity to find another Ikkari. Helmi actually wasn't even discovered at that point, but because we knew that Ikkari was close by, it is hosted within the mafic and ultramafic rocks in the similar stratigraphy that we have within our properties as well. It's such a fantastic discovery, such a high yield for capital, so we don't want to lose that opportunity. So we started this systematic work focusing on the large structures, particularly on the mafic and ultramafic side, and that's what we've been doing continuously for the past almost 2 years. And now we are starting to get to the phase that we are generating tens and tens of anomalies. And the anomalies, what we are seeing, these are the same scale that have led to these significant discoveries within the region. So no, I'm quite encouraged with what we are seeing. The scale of the anomalies, the abundance of the anomalies, and we are seeing anomalies, over tens of kilometers of the strike length of the structure.
Okay, and Amerusko, this is another deposit that you focused on prior to Helmi. You've recently found mineralization on the other side of a key structure there within new rock types, I believe it's gabbro. Can you discuss maybe how important these results are and whether or not you're going to be focusing on that project as well?
Well, I consider these new findings in gabbro and gold-bearing structure in gabbro quite significant. And again, I'm sorry I keep repeating myself, but these big structures, those are the keys. And now when we have a big structure and we drilled lots of gold in the sediment side already a couple of years ago, and now as we are seeing that, hey, we have those gold-bearing structures on the other side as well, on the mafic and ultramafic side, it kind of like proves the hypothesis as well that, hey, we can have gold on both of these host rocks. And that opens kind of like and confirms that yes, that we have a really, really good chance of finding gold mineralization on the mafic and ultramafic side. And at Amerusko, it opens, let's say, new dimension to expand the mineral occurrence there as well.
So, and I guess, last question here, are you finding good correlation between those high-grade visible gold-bearing boulders and some of your more recent geophysical and base of till surveys?
Well, not really. These high-grade nuggety golds, these are, let's say, in chemically inert sediments. We don't have much geophysical signature within those, or there's not much iron, there's not much magnesium, there's not much sulfur in those. So those sediment-hosted quartz vein, where we have lots of gold in a nuggety gold, those are tricky ones from geophysical and geochemical point of view. And they are irregular in their shape as well, so they require lots of drilling. We've seen lots of cases in Canada where companies are drilling this type of deposits and drilling hundreds of thousands of meters. And that's the other spectrum of this orogenic gold mineralization, is these consistent zones of gold mineralization within high strain zones associated with pyrite or magnetite stringers. And that's what we see at Ikkari and Helmi and Kutuvuoma. There we have a consistent wide zones of gold mineralization. It's not nuggety, it's not that high grades, but in terms of exploration efficiency, these are superior targets. Very, very efficiently, once you get in the system, you can define tonnages and ounces, compared to these nuggety gold system with irregular geometry. And this is one of the reasoning that we are now putting quite a bit of effort on making sure that we don't miss this opportunity within our portfolio on properties.
Right. So to sum it up,
I think I'd just add, David, that we don't yet know whether or not, for instance, at the notches where we have thousands of samples sitting on surface and where we trench down on all kinds of flat veins that are clearly extensional and not dug down on a vertical feeder vein or a shear vein, for instance, or crack and seal type vein. We're not sure what the relationship is between that gold, both in situ and in float on surface, and what we might find in basotills in the very nearby volcanic rocks. So we are keenly investigating those areas now, thinking that the gold, having made its way into sediments that are so close to the volcanic package, that perhaps there's some potential nearby. Is that fair to say, Matty?
Yep.
Yep, perfect. So high grade, stay away from the high grade brittle nuggety golds in the seds. Look for those larger disseminated gold in the deep seated structures within the mafic, ultramafics, and where the chemistry is right, and they might be easier to tie together. So, perfect. Okay, well, with that, guys, David, Matty from Aurion Resources, I want to thank you guys for tuning in today with us.
Thanks so much, David.
Hey, thank you all, and sorry about the technical difficulties during this webinar. Thank you all.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much for everybody tuning in. Reminder that Red Cloud Securities has another webinar next Monday when Tim Lee sits down with Flying Nickel Mining. So that's November 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Many thanks.